All right, welcome on. We are holding by Pirke Avos, Ethical Fathers. Again, welcome on. We're holding by Pirke Avos, Ethics of Our Fathers. We're in chapter 2, Mishna 16. This is part 6. It'll be part 7, part 8, part 9. I'm sure we'll speak about over here. So we're speaking about still speaking about the evil eye. Rabbi Yeshua says, an evil eye, evil inclination, hatred of other people, remove a person from this world. Right? So we spoke last week about this idea that that basically, again, a person makes somebody jealous. Now, again, doesn't necessarily mean it's their fault, but let's say, I don't know, someone feels bad. They, let's say a person has a great spouse, kids, money, everything, whatever it may be. And what happens, even if the person didn't necessarily do anything wrong, right? They're not flaunting it. They're not, making anyone feel bad, in general. But again, we mentioned that it has to do with the person's perception, how somebody views it. Now, what that means is that we have to be extremely careful, right? No matter what we do, we have to be very careful. And that being said, even if we are, why in general should it be that God opens your file, right? Why should it be that happens? And the simple reason is because a person felt bad through you, or through your action, or whatever. We mentioned what Rav Aaron Cutler mentioned brought down by Purim, right? And that was that even though Yaakov quote unquote stole the blessing, nonetheless he didn't do anything wrong. Technically, I made Esav cry. Okay. But again, he had two things going for him. One is he listened to his mother, right? And that was prophecy, right? He listened to his mother and she had prophecy. So technically didn't do anything wrong, but Esav felt bad, right? He felt bad for what he's going through. And the person that made him feel bad was Yaakov. But again, he had a number of things going on his side that that shouldn't have mattered. The fact that Asa felt bad, okay. So let's say, God judges it, God looks at it. What does God say? He didn't do anything wrong. Right? Really, he didn't do anything wrong. Over here. But he made him feel bad. And the fact that he was conduit to make him feel bad. So what happened? He got punished. Right? Essentially down the line. He got punished, even though everyone would agree. Everyone would agree that really the blessing should have gone to Yaakov, right? It's hard to imagine why Yitzchak in general wanted the blessing to go to Esau. But okay. But the issue over here is, again, it's not a simple, it's not a simple issue. And the reason is because, it doesn't matter in general, what we think. Right? No one necessarily cares what we think. But if a person feels they were wronged, let's say they feel they were wronged by you. Now, you don't think you did anything wrong. Nonetheless, that's their perception. So if that's their perception, then a person has to work hard to make it not their perception, right? To make them feel, no, they're making a mistake. That's not what happened, or that wasn't maybe the intention, or whatever, right? But a person's perspective, though, you can't just Can't just poo-poo it and say, well, you're not allowed to feel that. They can say, a person can say, well, maybe you shouldn't have those feelings. Maybe you're not seeing the situation, the right way. Again, this gets very complicated. But I told the story, it happened to me, and thank God it hasn't come up in a while. But doesn't necessarily mean it won't, right? And that is that I made a statement. I'm not gonna say what the statement was, but I made a statement. Somebody, and I said I feel like X. I feel a certain way. So they, first of all, took it as offense. Probably shouldn't have said it, but they took it as as an offensive thing, and they said, "Oh, you said X." And my answer was, "I didn't say that. I said I felt like that." They're not the same thing, right? Really, it's not the same thing, But I mean, in practical terms, it's certainly not the same thing, right? It's definitely not the same thing over here. But I said I feel like this. And again, probably shouldn't have been said. Okay, right? But when that ever comes up, which hasn't come up in a long time, it comes up from time to time, but not very often. The conversation, that's exactly how it goes. But I didn't say that, right? They'll say, you said X. My answer is no, I didn't say that. I said, I feel like that. There's a big difference, right? It's a big difference, right? But again, the conversation goes nowhere. I never win the conversation because the person heard what they wanted to hear. I mean, they got offended by what was said. Okay. All right. That's certainly on me. That's certainly on me. Probably shouldn't have been said. Statement probably shouldn't have been said. Okay. But even so, that's not what was said. But that was perceived, right? So there's a big difference. So there, something like that, you got to try and get the person to say that's not what happened, or that's not what they meant, or, whatever. Now, what if you're in that situation, the person's not going to listen? They're just not going to listen, right? So then, you can apologize, whatever, but like, if they're not going to listen, then this goes nowhere. But the person has to be careful of how other people perceive them and what they do. There can be things that are obvious, less obvious, but if someone perceives a person did X and they didn't do it, or the person themselves is going to say that why should they feel that way? There's no reason that a person should feel that way. But it doesn't negate the fact, even if you think the person isn't right, it doesn't negate the fact the person feels it. So at the same time, you can say, but, they don't have a right to feel this. They shouldn't feel this way, so to speak. You've done this, you've done that. But something is missing, right? That is the point. Something is missing over here where what a person did either didn't come out the right way or didn't go the way they wanted, whatever it was, and the other person took it, in a certain way. Now, can a person undo the damage? Possibly. Possibly it can be undone. But at the same time, it's kind of hard to change a person's outlook unless you change it by action. In other words, what would a person have to do? A person would have to show by action. Literally show by action, not saying, oh, I did this, now you can't feel this, right? They have to show by action in some way that the person should not feel what they feel. In other words, through their action, what's going to happen? They won't have a claim. They won't have a claim anymore. Now, I'm not going to say, does it always work out that way? It doesn't work out that way. But if a person has a certain perspective, they have a certain perspective. Yeah. A certain perspective does not mean they're right. They might be. They might be, they might not be. So if they're right, let's say, or even if they're not, you have to change somehow their perspective of how they see it. And that's not always an easy thing to do. I'm not going to say it's impossible. But if a person does change their action to make sure the person doesn't feel what they're claiming to feel, that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. Now, obviously, it's going to depend on the case and what it is, but we don't want to give off a bad or negative perception. Sometimes, what do you do if someone, they're just brainwashed? They see certain things, and no matter what you say is not going to help, right? This comes up also where somebody being very confident, let's say very confident in what they believe, and the person thing is being conceited. Now, obviously, we believe we're right. We believe, the Torah path is right. Everyone else is basically wrong and misguided. Okay. Now, someone will say, well, you seem to think you have, you know all the answers. You seem pretty cocky, right? Let's say. Now, a question of being cocky or not, right? A person can feel confident. They can feel confident in what they believe. That's not being cocky, right? That's not saying, oh, I think I'm so much better than you. It has nothing to do with that. If a person does it, obviously it's wrong, right? We're not talking about that, right? But when someone comes across, A, as having knowledge, right? And B, being confident in that knowledge based on what they know. And someone comes along and says, oh, you're stuck up, you're this, you're that, and that's their perspective. Well, guess what? They're wrong, right? In this case, they're wrong. Again, if a person would show that they're conceited and whatever, okay, right? Then the person's right. But in general, that person will be wrong, right? That person will be dead wrong. Now, trying to convince the person that's not true, they have it misconstrued. They're making a very serious mistake. So if they make a serious mistake, is that my fault? Not my fault, right? It's not my fault. Just because a person, doesn't mean they're perfect. Doesn't mean they have all the knowledge, right? But they have certain knowledge. If they have certain knowledge, good. Right? So someone says that, say, oh, you seem pretty confident in this and that. You say, listen, I've been learning for a while, got, good teachers, this, that. Like, what's your beef? What's your problem? Show me I'm wrong. Have a discussion. And, most likely they won't challenge it. They're probably not going to be interested in challenging it. They might. Some people that are Bible thumpers, let's say, maybe, maybe they'll challenge it. Maybe they'll just make fun of you and say, oh, you believe that JC is not the Messiah, you're going to find hell forever, this and that. Okay. Or I say, listen, if you think I'm wrong, I'm open to hear evidence. You're not claiming you know everything. Right? So these type of things I don't have to worry about. And the reason is because their perception is wrong. In other words, they are saying things that, very simple are wrong. I have to worry and bend over backwards. If they're not looking for information, they're not looking for, to get to what the truth is. How far do you have to go? Like, in other words, a lot of times people talk at each other. They don't talk to each other. And it's very simple because they don't want to hear what the other person has to say. Again, if people want to prove it wrong, okay, show me. Right? Show the evidence. They want to show evidence, good, show it. If not, then I don't have to worry. There's another thing people say, about, confronting other people, and, especially when it's family, they want to get confrontational. But what if a person says something, let's say give them information or whatever, and they blaspheme. They say things against God. They say things against Torah. Right? Is that a problem? Is that a problem in general? Or putting a stumbling block in front of someone? It shouldn't be a problem. Yeah. Because then you could have, you'd never have a discussion with anybody because you're worried, oh, they might say this, they might say that. It doesn't matter. Right? Let them bring proofs. Let them say something. Okay. But, I have to worry, right? These questions come up quite a bit. Do I have to worry what they're going to say and say negative things against God, negative things against Torah? No. You're going to say, well, they might have said it anyway, but because of this discussion, they're going to bring it up more and say more heresy. Okay. You're going to say, they might, in this context, you're bringing it up or they're bringing it up, right? And I can't believe, if God was this and God was that, and I can say all kinds of things. So good, try and answer them. They don't want to listen. Okay, but is that my fault? This is a serious prohibition, right? It's called don't put a stumbling block in front of someone. It goes so far that, it's one of the things we beat our chest for on Yom Kippur. Yeah, a person, let's say, gave bad advice, not on purpose. Someone, let's say, give an example, a person doesn't have ways. Yeah, they don't have ways, they ask you for directions. They ask you directions somewhere. Right? So you tell them go here, go there, whatever, and then you realize afterwards they leave. Made a mistake. This is a problem. That's putting a stumbling block in front of someone. You gotta tell me you didn't do it on purpose. Good. Right? 100%. Right? You didn't do it on purpose. Okay. So even if you didn't do it on purpose, then what? You still, okay, you have to go through, you have to go through Yom Kippur, you have to repent. You have to be careful. And if someone asks for advice and they're not really capable of giving advice, they should pass it on. Say, listen, I'm not the address. The Mishna Pirke Avos will get there one day. I don't know, when I'm about 97. And that is what the Mishna say. Mishna says you got to know your place. You got to know when to pass on, when to say, I'm not sure, right? When to say, it's above my pay grade, so to speak. You got to ask someone else or, whatever. Better to say, I don't know, and give a bad answer. Right? You don't want to mess someone up in the process. And there are good meaning people out there. This is a much, much bigger topic. But there are good meaning people out there who want to help others, but the reality is it causes more problems. There are cases where, someone goes to say a therapist, whatever type of therapist, and they make things worse. Can make things worse. I just actually read a story today. Read a story earlier, about that. I'm not gonna say all therapists are bad, right? In general, but yeah, someone got bad advice, and until they went to see someone else, almost destroyed the marriage. That can happen, right? That can happen. You only hear sometimes you only hear all the bad cases, right? Of things being messed up. But okay, not if a person needs a therapist, but whatever it is. So yeah, it's like anything else. You need to find the right person. You definitely have to find the right person. But in general, a lot of times you hear the bad cases before you hear anything good. But at the same time, a person has to know what they're capable of doing. And it's better to say, I don't know, than go down a path where you're not sure, where you potentially could, give bad advice. And unfortunately, they're well-meaning people. They're not doing it on purpose, right? 100%, right? I'll judge them favorably. They're not doing it on purpose. But there are people out there, as well-meaning as they are, right? And there are things they just shouldn't be involved in. There are things that there are things that they shouldn't do. And they have to know they shouldn't do. Right? But again, no one wants to get stuck. No one wants to pass someone else on. They say, oh, they're coming to me, very good. It's also, maybe good for their ego as well. So they say, yeah, they're coming to me, beautiful. So you try and find a plan to help them, something to help them, whatever. Again, it's coming from a good place, not necessarily a bad place. Could be ego gets in the way, maybe. Okay, right? But in general, it's coming from a good place. So if it's coming from a good place, What's the problem? The problem is they give the wrong advice. 100% they give the wrong advice, right? But again, one of the most important things over here is that we don't, we want others to perceive us in a positive way. We do not want to be perceived in a negative way for any reason, right? No matter what the reason is, any reason. We definitely do not, want to do that. Amongst family, friends, others, do not want to give anyone ammunition for nothing negative, right? But we're not perfect. 100%, we're not perfect. We can certainly, we can certainly make mistakes, no question. But at the same time, we are human. We want to minimize any any issues. But a person who comes out and says, well, I have this issue with you, because of this, that, and the other thing, you're gonna say, but it's not true. That's not what you did. That's not what you thought. It's not, whatever. So a person has to knock that idea out of their head, right? That's what they need to do. And they have to do it in a way where, the person's going to be able to see what they're saying, is being true. Again, it doesn't always work out this way. But, there are misconceptions. There are misconceptions that people have. But if it's a perception where a person says, I feel like this, or I feel like you said this, or I feel like, whatever it is. Now, it could be true, it could not be true. Now, let's say in your eyes, we said before, you don't see it that way. You 100% don't see it that way. But the other person still feels it. The other person still feels the negativity. Very good. They still feel it. So then, you can't say, well, you're not allowed to feel that. That you can't say. You can say why maybe they shouldn't feel that. Maybe why, any number of reasons why that may not be true. But if they're not convinced, so I'm not saying in a bad way, but they're not convinced, then you have to change and convince them. That's a harder thing to do because, a lot of times what's involved? What's involved? Ego, right? Or ego, as we say here in Israel. Ego. It's a big thing. I should apologize. I should say this, you don't believe it. You don't believe what they're saying. 100% you don't believe what they're saying. And you think their perception is wrong. Okay. Yeah, even if you think it's true, they don't think it's true. They 100% don't think it's true. So if they don't think it's true, then you have to somehow change their perspective. Now, if it's out of the realm of reality, and it's going to be something where, really they're wrong, so to speak, and they didn't do anything wrong. It's kind of a catch-22. It's kind of a hard position, to be in because some people, they don't want to see they're wrong. They definitely don't want to see they're wrong, and it's hard to convince them. Again, using the example of someone having knowledge, and that knowledge are going to say, oh, look, the person's conceited. And not a question of being conceited. They feel they have the requisite knowledge. They think they're right. Okay. Being right doesn't mean you're conceited. Confidence doesn't mean you're conceited per se. Right? If a person is, obviously that's wrong. Right? But if a person has a lot of confidence, maybe that's how it's perceived. Maybe a person says, oh, you think you know everything. No, we're not making that claim to know everything. Right? The claim is, yeah, we think we're right based on this criteria or based on that criteria. Oh, that's what you think. That's, again, it's about looking at the facts. What are the facts? Do the facts prove it to be true or not? And if you got other facts to disprove it, good. Let's hear it. Let me see it. Right? Let me see it. There's an issue, right? There's definitely an issue, over here. Again, I'm not saying this is so simple. It's these situations can be, extremely complex. They can be very complex, as human beings are, very complex. But again, we do not, to the best of our ability, want anyone to have any ammunition against us, right? We don't want to, even better, we don't want to make anyone, feel bad. Even if a person says, well, I felt like this, you got to think, what are the ramifications of saying such a thing? How's the other person going to look at what you said? Now, you should calculate when you talk, when you say something, what effect it could have or not have before you say it. Person got to be careful. We don't see the far-reaching repercussions. A lot of times we say something, we react. We make a statement, it's a reaction. Very good. It's a reaction. Who says that a reaction is good? Right? We're going to be careful. So you say, well, if that's the case, I shouldn't speak. That's what someone came to the Chofetz Chaim. And someone came to the Chofetz Chaim after he wrote his book on Shmiras Lashon, guarding your tongue, not speaking Lashon Hara. So the came and said, Rebbe, you told us we can't speak. We're not allowed to talk. The Chofetz Chaim said, I didn't say you're not allowed to speak. I'm teaching you how to speak. Right? And a lot of times it's also, a much bigger topic, and that is, a lot of times, what do? We react. We don't think, we react. What we call a knee-jerk reaction. Then a person said something. They reacted, they got angry, something happened, whatever. They react, and then it causes the whole thing. But you think, isn't that normal? Isn't that what most people do? Isn't there a statement, think before you speak? Should apply like across the board. But again, maybe someone said something offensive. Maybe someone took something out of context, trying to make you look bad. Other things, what do you do? React. Torah doesn't want you to react. Torah wants you to think first. Then the Torah says, good. You thought about it. You thought about all the different things. Where it's going to go, how people are going to look at it, this and that. Then you react. Right? But you don't react straight away. Just, looking at things on Shabbos over, about, in the Parsha. It's very interesting that, Yaakov Avinu says, God, if you're with me, you'll take care of me, right? God says, yeah, don't worry. I'll take care of you, clothe you, I'll feed you, whatever. So Yaakov has a very high level of bitachon, very, very high level of faith and belief in God. Now, based on that, which is what we all need, essentially what we all need. But, at the end of the day, he asked God for, God take care of him. But he also, has got a little bit to put his best foot forward. So I'll give an example. So the beginning of the parsha, what happens? He goes to lie down, and he puts a stone underneath him. So Rashi says it wasn't just a stone; it was a whole bunch of stones. Put it around his head or whatever, and they all got in a fight because this stone said, "I want my, this had to be under, on top of me," and other stone said no, and whatever. The whole big argument until God just put them all together into one stone. Yaakov put his head down to rest on that stone. Now, Rashi also says, like, what's going on over here? What's going on? Even if he puts his head on the stone, one reason may be so he doesn't get attacked by wild animals, right? In other words, his head's on the stone, whatever, they won't attack, right? I don't know whether to be afraid, whatever, whatever it may be. Right, it comes, my Rebbe, Rabbi going to Moshe Moshlita should be well. So yes, how's that help? How's that help? In other words, if he was surrounded, let's say, by a whole bunch of stones, let's say, right? He put his head down and he's using it for protection. Let's say against that. Let's say that's the reason. He says, and they're not going to attack his legs, not going to attack other part of his body, right? Only that, if you tell me his whole body's surrounded, very good, right? That would make more sense. His whole body's surrounded. So, any wild animals aren't going to come near him, right? They'll be afraid. Good. That's what happened. He says his whole body's exposed. So he didn't care if his head is surrounded, right? How does that help? How should that help? So he says, the Rebbe there points out, he said, right. His whole body, the whole rest of his body is exposed. If his whole rest of his body is exposed, then what did he do? So essentially what he did is he put his best foot forward a little bit, right? A little bit, he put his best foot forward. And then what did he do? He relied the rest on God. God's going to take care of him. And God's going to take care of his needs. But he did something, right? He had to do something. So, Michael Peterman, it should be well, also brings down the story with the Brisker Rav. And the Brisker Rav was, where was he, in Vilna? Or wherever he was during the war. And, getting bombed left and right. So, the question is what to do. Should he stay in his house? Or stay in his apartment. If he stays there, building could get hit. Right? Should they go to a bomb shelter? Now, they go to a bomb shelter. That'll help, but what if the building collapses and they're trapped? Right? So what do you do? So he decided to stay where he was. Now, they asked him, usually, very calculated, you're always afraid, this, that, making all kinds of calculations. How are you so cool, calm, and collected now? He said, what is in my hands to do something one way or another? Good. Right? So then I'm much more careful. By putting in, too much ishtadlus is putting in, putting my best foot forward too much or not or whatever. Yeah, then I'm a lot more careful. In this case, it's totally out of my hands. Right? What's going to happen is totally out of my hands. So that's a different thing. There's nothing I can do. Right? More or less, he's saying it's onus. Right? There's a bum nature here. This is not in my, let's say it better. It's not in my control. It's out of my control. So he says, if it's out of my control, what am I supposed to do? There's nothing to do. Make one step here, one step there. Yeah. God's the one in charge. Right? It's not me making the decision. If I had to make a decision, okay. So that's a whole different set of parameters. But if the decision is already taken away from me, and I'm really under 100% onus, and it's out of my control, nothing to do. Right? He's the one in control. He's controlling it. So what's the difference? If I go here, I go there. He's the one in control. Yeah? In other words, if he's going to save me, so I don't have to leave my house. If he's not going to save me, then going into a bunker doesn't help. Right? So where do you go? What do you do? So you say, my Rebbe's Rebbe, Moshe Schneider, you would say, every bullet has its address. Every missile has its address. And during the war in London, just point this out, London was getting bombed like no tomorrow. There were 2 people in the base measures when the bombs were going on. Everyone else scattered. It was my Rebbe and his Rebbe. That was it. They just sat there and learned. They sat there and learned. You got to say, isn't that irresponsible? They have to go to air raid shelters and this and that. That's what they believed. That is what they believed. Every missile has its place. Right? Every bullet has its place if it's meant to be. No matter where you are. What about putting your best foot forward in protection? No greater divine protection than Torah. Right? Again, not everyone's at that level. And the majority of people not at that level. They're going to put their best foot forward. Right? That was their putting their best foot forward. So, when you look at it in those terms, that's what we have to do. That's our obligation when it comes to anything. We put our best foot forward, but you got to remember as well, putting your best foot forward is no guarantee for anything. You have to do it. Plenty of times you have to do it. Yeah, that's true. Right? You don't have a choice. But that doesn't guarantee you anything. Yeah, when it comes to business, good example. Try this, try that, try the other thing. Right? Whatever it may be, you put your best foot forward. The answer could be no. Or the answer could be, well, we'll see what happens. All right? But again, you have to do it. That's our obligation. Is that a guarantee for success? No. People make the mistake. It's the power of my hand, as the Torah says. You think it's the power of your hand? No. It's not the power of your hand. It's the power of God's hand. That's why my Rebbe says every time, the Israeli government comes out and says, yeah, look what we did over here, look what we did over there, the power of the IDF, this, that. He says that puts the Jewish people in much greater danger. Much greater danger. Because if you don't see the miracles, and you're saying it's the power of my hand, now no one disagrees, you need standing army. No one disagrees. Right? And, you fight in a 7-front war, on a lot of different sides. Okay. But there have been, tremendous open miracles. I don't think there's any question. A lot of these rockets hit nothing. Doesn't mean they always hit nothing. Yeah, if we're on a much higher level, yeah, there wouldn't be any tragedy. Nobody would die. Like someone asked the Pirke Avos, well, it's an unbelievable miracle during the 6-day war that they were preparing for thousands and thousands, body bags, expecting so many people to die. Right? It was only like a couple thousand. Right? It was much, much less than they ever would have dreamed of. And the Pirke Avos said, if we were doing what we should have done better, there wouldn't have been anyone. There wouldn't be any body bags. No soldier should have died. It's true. It could have been a heck of a lot worse, sure. There's no question. Could have been a lot worse. Right? And this war, whatever, also could have been a lot worse. Even though, he had hundreds of soldiers unfortunately dying. But it could have been a lot worse. A lot worse. But they're going to say it's because of our technology, it's all this and all that. Right? And that, my Rebbe says, is the biggest danger. That's the biggest danger. When you're saying it's only about us. It's only about what I do. It's only about the power of my hands. Power in hands don't matter. That doesn't matter. What matters is God bless it or he doesn't bless it. Right? Without getting into politics. If he blesses it, very good. Right? Then you'll see miracles. No question. There'll be absolutely no question. But to say, yeah, it was the power of my hand and this and that, I mean, that's a much bigger danger. Much, much bigger danger. And as he always says, it has nothing to do, with anyone in Iran or any of these other places that can cause Israel damage. What does he say? That he's most afraid of people in Israel who sin. Jews who sin. Okay, if they sin other places, also bad. But if you're sinning in the palace of the king, it's worse. 10 times worse. Yeah, 10 times worse. Doesn't mean it's not considered a sin outside of Israel. For sure it is. Right? But if you're in the palace of the king, it's worse. That's the biggest thing that can get God's ire, God's anger. Because you're saying it's the power of my hands. You take God right out of the picture. I mean, and all these things, all these wars over the years, it's impossible in general to take God out of the picture. Impossible. Because the odds are so stacked against you in so many different ways. To say that, it's power of the army, power of this, power of that. Right? It doesn't make any sense. All right, one example. A few years back, people were, attacking people on buses, right? Or stab people, kill people, on buses. And, all of a sudden it stopped. A short time later it stopped. People, like bringing, what do you call it? Whatever, different things to protect themselves on a bus, just in case something would happen. Some American makes this video. He says, anyone comes near me, I got my Louisville Slugger. I got my baseball bat. Great. Being stabbed by a few people is not going to really help you so much. Right? But in general, what stopped it? And what would stop tens of thousands of Arabs just like coming from different places that are legal in the country and just doing this? I mean, I'm not giving them any ideas. No one should be listening here, right? But what should stop them? Nothing. Nothing should stop them. Not about intelligence, not about this, not about that. This thing went on for like, I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. Forget how long. Like, these attacks went on for, and they stopped it. Right? And sorry, let's say better. It stopped. Now, they'll claim, Israel's the claim, yeah, it's intelligence, this, that, we stopped it. No. Because something like that, according to nature, is impossible to stop. No rhyme or reason. They could do it all day long if they wanted to. Right? If someone's legal to come in the country, yeah, you can't stop that. They can do it all over the country if they wanted to. Again, nobody should listen to this, might think of doing such a thing. But in the end, it stopped. Why did it stop? According to us, because God stopped it, period. He stopped it. Not because of the army and his intelligence and, and all that. Because God wanted to stop. Yeah, it's a question here I want to deal with. Somebody asks question about mamzer. Yeah, mamzer is a child out of wedlock, or even not necessarily out of wedlock, but it could be two people not allowed to be together, right? You can have two people not allowed to be together, and they have a child, right? They have this child. Very good. Someone says, okay, they were born to a very young mother, the age of 16. Okay. She didn't get married, whatever. Okay. Mother's grandfather was Ashkenazi, mother is a Christian. So if the mother's a Christian, there's no mamzer. No mamzer by a non-Jew. Mamzer, this status is only by a Jew. Does not apply to a non-Jew. It is interesting. We're talking about two Jews here, by the way. Two Jews have to be involved, right? Two Jews have to be involved that are not allowed to be together. Why God allows them to have a child, whatever, that's God's business. Why bring such a child into the world? That child can only marry mamzer, someone of the same union, right? Or a convert, because there's a problem of pedigree over here, right? And a Jew has a pedigree, not, so therefore a quote unquote regular Jew, born Jew. So, they have a stronger pedigree than a convert, even though convert to Judaism is like they consider like a newborn child, right? Very good. It also means their soul is it's probably Mount Sinai, and then went through assimilation into marriage and became non-Jewish. How that happens is Kabbalah 101. How a soul can be non-Jewish, turn from a Jewish soul to a non-Jewish soul. Very good, right? That's Kabbalah 101. But that applies to a Jew. It applies to two Jews, not a non-Jew. Right? And so the Gemara says, in such a union, there are a number of things that the Gemara says over there. Right? One says that the child is puzzled, it's blemished. Yeah, another says it's this is by, let's say, a Jewish woman, well, just clarifying, that a Jewish woman that has relations with a non-Jew, and they have a child. Now, technically speaking, this is a separate case of mamzer. Get back to mamzer in a second. Just want to clarify that child, technically speaking, is a Jew. It's got a blemish on the soul, but it's considered a Jew. Again, it's a Jewish woman. It's a Jewish woman with who has relations with a non-Jew. Now, on that, the Gemara says a number of things. One opinion is that status is a mamzer, right? Even with a non-Jew. Another opinion says he's puzzled, he's blemished, right? Another opinion says it's that child is Jewish. We hold according to third opinion, that the child is Jewish. But in general, if one of the participants over here is a goy, it's a non-Jew, then that does not apply according to the status of mamzer. So if the mother's Jewish, right? The mother's grandfather was Ashkenazi. Okay, what about the mother's mother, right? Or the mother's grandmother? Let's say better. If the mother's grandmother is Jewish and they're Jewish, right? Then that woman is Jewish. If it's only Jewish on the father's side, that doesn't matter, right? Then that woman, this person's mother, would be a non-Jew, and you don't have a mamzer by a non-Jew, right? That doesn't exist. If the mother is a Christian, again, if they're Jewish and they're a Christian, they're still Jewish. If they're not Jewish and a Christian, doesn't matter. They could be a Muslim, they could be a Buddhist, they could be, I don't know, any pagan you want. Doesn't matter if they're not Jewish. If they're Jewish, they're still Jewish, whether they convert to another religion or not. And when they die after 120 years, God's going to judge them as a Jew. Doesn't matter if they convert to another religion, right? If they're not Jewish, doesn't matter if they're pagan or whatever, right? Whatever they are, whatever they may be, doesn't matter. That's not going to matter because the status of a mamzer does not apply to a non-Jew, right? In general, does not apply to a non-Jew. So if the mother's a non-Jew, it's a moot point. 100% it's a moot point. If the mother was a Jew and a Christian, yeah, that would apply. If the other person was a Jew. If the other person they're involved in is a Jew, then that would apply. If the other person's a non-Jew, right? If the father is a non-Jew, then the status of mamzer does not apply. And if the mother is Jewish and a Christian, so it doesn't matter what religious affiliation the mother is, right? Whether the mother is Christian, Buddhist, or anything else, doesn't really matter. The fact is they are considered Jewish. Now, if the mother is not halakhically Jewish, then the status of mamzer doesn't apply. That is what I would say. That's what I would say on that. Yeah. So further on this discussion, so we said that what a person perceives and how they perceive it is my problem. It is 100% a person's problem. Now, as we said, a person can try and stop the way the other person thinks, convince them why they might be wrong or whatever. But if they still have that perception, now, if you don't feel like you did anything wrong, and there's no way to fix this perception, there's no way to fix it, right? But if a person can try and change why the person feels the way they do, obviously that's better. But as we said before, you run into problems, and the problem will be that a person, the issue is going to be his ego. I should change. This is what they think, and whatever. So it depends, how much a person here wants to get involved. Right? In other words, why should I change? They're wrong, right? Let's say you think they're wrong, which they may be. Yeah, you might think they're out to lunch. There's nothing for me to do. That's how they perceive it, but they're wrong. Again, if they're delusional, other things, I don't know if I have to worry about it. But if a person wants to try and fix it out, I don't think it's a bad thing, right? Depending, but there's a lot of emotional things you have to deal with over here, which you don't necessarily want to do. Person may not want to do it. So I would say, how important is this relationship? If it's important enough, maybe you'll do something to change it. Yeah, maybe. If it's not that important, then even if you're right, then you're not going to do anything about it. I was involved in something where someone said, and they agreed with what I said, basically. But they said, this is who I am. This is who I am. Like, deal with it. You don't like it? My Rebbe would say, go eat kugel. Okay. Deal with it. So the question is, how important is that relationship? If it's that important, you got to overlook it, or not. So it depends what it is. I would think a lot of people do not like one-sided relationships. So a person can say it's not worth it. You make all the effort, you don't get so much, you don't get so much back from it. Okay. And the person say, you got to be the bigger person, right? Anyone ever hear that? You got to be the bigger person. Why do you have to be the bigger person over here? I don't care if it's family or not. Why do you have to be the bigger person? Just for the sake of family harmony, this and that. Oh, maybe. I could hear that. But if not, see, that's also a hard thing. A person makes all the effort. They don't feel like they get anything in return, so to speak. And the person says, you have this whole discussion and you want to have a relationship. The person says, this is the way I am, this is the way it is. Not going to change. So you have a choice. You have a choice how important that is. If it's important to you, okay, so you swallow it, you move on. You realize what type of relationship it's going to be. Okay. If it's not that important, what's going to happen? It'll go by the wayside. Because it's not that important. No matter family, not family, isn't family, blood is thicker than water? I don't know. Family's family, right? Maybe. Doesn't mean that, people can do whatever they want, whenever they want. But this comes up all the time. Comes up all the time. They can try and convince you of things or, whatever it may be. And they say, we'll keep it very simple, right? In our case, what do we say? What does the person say? What does the person say over here? Person says, listen, they're saying they're not going to change. So when a person says they're not going to change, or they don't care about change, what does that tell you? They don't care that much. They're not willing to make the effort. So someone is not going to make the effort, what's your choice? What essentially is your choice? Your choice is either I deal with it, and it continues, and that's just the way it's going to be, or not. Yeah. I heard someone once say, well, they're talking about something else, and someone once told me this and said, they were told, you'll be the bigger person. You'll be the bigger person. So you know what the person answered? The person turned the tables and said, if this was you, if you were me, let's say better. If you were me, the person said, would you do it? Silence. They said, yeah, that's what I thought. Good for the goose, not for the gander. I get it why people want it. Makes sense. Family structure is important. People should speak to each other. Good. Doesn't always work out that way. Definitely doesn't work out that way all the time. But if you were me, would you do this? Then you have to see what they're going to answer. Because essentially they can say, well, I would do it anyway. I would do it anyway. Okay. That doesn't mean you have to do it. Doesn't mean that. Person has to make their own decision. But these are hard decisions. Right? Some people, you weren't close to family anyway. Okay, so it's a moot point. You move on. Friends will be more like family, which is true. Which 100% is true. That's another idea over here. Right? So again, perception of what other people think is important. I'm not big into externals and different things, okay, but we gotta be careful, right? That is really the bottom line. We don't want to make, it's the idea of an ein hara, right? Of an evil eye. You do not want to make anyone jealous of anything. That is really the point, right? So in other words, even if a person has money, don't flaunt it. Or, what are you going to do? You get exceptional kids, this and that. There's not much you can do. So even if a person was jealous of other person, when their file gets open, God's going to say, yeah, they didn't do anything wrong over here. Right? They'll get judged in a positive way. Like, how can you hold it against you? Right? That doesn't make any sense. Why he should hold it against you? Because, if someone's jealous, you didn't do anything wrong, and your kids didn't do anything wrong, and they have to be exceptional, very good. So you lucked out, okay. But that's not your issue. So, regardless, a person still has to be careful. You have to be very careful. Now, there's another explanation. There's another explanation over here. Is that when we look at an evil eye, another explanation is that eyes are weakened things that they have to do when it comes to emunah. Right? I always come back to emunah here. Right? Faith and belief in God means that a person has doubts about foundation of Torah and how God runs the world. Now, this is something obviously we have to work at. And we have to work at very hard. Because a lot of times what happens, we look at life and we say it's not fair. Or we're getting unfairly punished. In short, what do? We work hard to try and change and reach our potential. What happens? We get tossed around. We get tossed around. But let's understand. Why are a person's eyes weak? Not literally. It means, why are they weak? Because we don't like what we see. Then what does a person do? He say, wow, I'm working hard and I'm trying and I'm doing all these things. I'm getting slammed. Getting slammed left and right. Very good. Because it's not fair. And if God does this, I heard someone say, or a number of people say this, not just one person. Yeah. And if that happens, why should I pray to him? Why should I even make blessings? Why should I do anything? He's only going to toss me around anyway. Like, what's the difference? So when that happens, they have doubts about the foundation of Torah and about how God runs the world. In other words, this person built an extension, and you're being squeezed like no tomorrow. You can't build. Or you're so stuck far behind certain things, it's going to take you a long time, even if you get money. You're just paying off debts and different things. Okay. So, but you're upset. Why is this person able to build? Why should their parents have helped them? Why, So then you start questioning. But it's not fair. Why does this person have it easy and I don't? Why does someone, live in a stronger Jewish community and I don't? And I have to get out and this, and it's too hard and whatever. Good questions. Good questions. What's the problem? The problem is perspective. The problem is they have lack of emunah. That's the problem. They have lack of emunah. They're saying life is unfair. They're basically saying God doesn't run the world the right way. And why should I want to be so close to him? Whatever, we're going to get tossed around. This is the age-old question why righteous people suffer. Because if I'm going in the right way, in the right path, it should be easier. And if we're working so hard to change, again, this question comes up all the time. You're working so hard to change. what happens? It gets slaughtered. Life is very hard. That also puts poison in a person. So if they see someone, that seems more successful than them, better than them, other things, makes them upset. Causes jealousy. So God opens the person's file. Yeah. But there's something wrong here, right? In this case, there's something wrong with the person here. Because here, their foundation of Torah is correct. Because what they're saying is, whatever I'm doing, obviously I'm doing enough. Obviously I'm doing enough where, it should be easier for me. Well, it should be a lot easier. And I'm holding better than 90% of world Jewry. So what? Heard this many times. From doing so much and this and that. So what if I don't live in a community? So what if, I can't move for now or whatever? That shouldn't affect anything. Well, it does. No matter what secular Jews are doing. Can't look at what's around. It's got to look what's in front of my face. So this essentially is 100% a lack of emunah. Person has doubts in the foundation of Torah and how God runs the world. Yeah, it's going to happen to everybody. This is something you got to seriously work on. Because when we see things going on, we have no idea what we're seeing. Yeah, some people have it easy. Okay, they have other issues. Even if people have it easy, let's say financially, they got plenty of other issues. There are people that got plenty of money, they got serious health issues. I grew up among adults, most people know. I heard people say all the time, if you don't have your health, you have nothing. True, to a point. You can't do the same things. You're always worried about different health things. But what does the money help? It makes life easier in certain ways. Or would a person rather have a problem with children? Would a person would rather have problems, I don't know, psychological problems? Or all of these combined? Sure. What it means over here is a person doubts foundations of Torah. That's a serious thing. They don't believe God is doing the right thing. They don't believe God's in charge. Or they question, let's say better, they question what he does. Now, it's easy to question when things don't go our way. But if we look at the bigger picture, as we always say, if you look at the bigger picture, what happens? So I'll say like this, that if a person takes a self-accounting, take a self-accounting every day. Every day you take a self-accounting. Now, the Chosam Avos says, as he says in Duties of the Heart, he says we don't do a tenth, a third, a fifth, a half of what we're supposed to do in serving God. So this is like, it's very comforting in certain ways. So, well, what's the point? I'm not going to be able to fulfill what I'm supposed to do anyway. Yeah, so why bother? You're only going to fail. Okay, but you got to try. You got to work hard. You can't give up. Right? That may be true. We don't do, a lot of what we're supposed to do. Well, I would say very simple. If a person took a proper self-accounting before, their head hits the pillow, they take a self-accounting. They think about, how they interact with others. How did they pray? How did they make blessings? How did, make a simple list how the day went, what you did, what you accomplished, what you set out to accomplish, according to Torah, right? Whether you convert or not doesn't matter, according to Torah. Does a person think they really maximized to their true potential what they did during the day within that time period they were awake? How many people are going to score 100 or 110? I don't think too many. Some might. Some definitely might. They maximized everything they could have. Okay. There are people like that. The vast majority probably fell a little bit short, at least a little bit short. But if that was the case, and we're really honest, not to the point where a person, is going to totally demolish themselves, right? And totally, feel so bad about what they've done and, be brutally honest. And then, we say, if you live in the past, you have no future. Say, oh, God's never going to accept my repentance and all kinds of things. Okay. But if we're honest enough, in general, if we would be honest enough, would we pass the test day in and day out? And the answer probably is no. We're not going to pass the test. Again, it doesn't mean we don't have to try. Doesn't mean we don't have to work hard. Doesn't mean that. But if we were brutally honest, you don't get out of bed. You will not get out of bed on a daily basis. A person has to have self-esteem. Mentioned that many times. Very good. You got to feel good about yourself. You don't always say, well, I did this, I did that, did the other thing. God's never going to accept my repentance, never accept this, never accept that. Yeah. That'll kill you. Then a person's going to turn around and say, so what's the point? What's the point? I'm only going to fail. That's what's going to happen. I'm only going to fail. I'm never going to be good in God's eyes again. Who says I really did repentance properly, this, that, right? It's very simple to destroy ourselves, right? And the evil inclination just help you along the way, right? Keep egging you on. Okay. You can't blow it off either, but if we are brutally honest enough without destroying ourselves in the process, no one gets up. You're down for the count. Nobody gets up. Impossible. Right? Absolutely impossible. You don't get up. So you can't take it with a grain of salt, but you gotta take it seriously. See, when a person's down and a person has difficulty, whatever it may be, think about it. Couldn't it be worse? Could be worse. So before a person starts saying, wow, why God do this? And why did he do that? Why did he do the other thing? It's not fair. Right? Let's talk about a general principle. There's a general principle that life is not about what's fair. A lot of times we make our own mistakes. We do our own things. Can't blame it on God. We did it. So the Gemara says you want to go on the right path, God will help you. You don't want to go on the right path, God won't stop you. Okay. So we have to take responsibility. Someone says, I'm being tossed around. Why should I pray? I'm doing everything I can, right? Everything humanly possible. Then what is happening? Getting tossed this way, that way, and the other way. God doesn't deserve my prayer. God allows you to pray. God wants you to pray to him. He wants you to have a connection. He gives you that opportunity. Does he need your prayer? No. He doesn't need your prayer. Not interested in your prayer. But he allows you to pray. He gives you that ability. Whether he answers is his choice, right? But he gives you the ability. Now, based on that, a person can say, but I prayed and I prayed. We still that, it's been years, months. Okay, so keep praying. I would say the most important thing to pray for is that God should bless whatever you do. God should put you in the right direction. right? He should help you as much as possible. That's what we pray for. Does it always go the way we think? Nope. Just the opposite, right? We probably say it probably never goes the way we think in many ways. But just because doors get closed does not mean doors open, right? Okay. But what's the point? The point is kind of a losing battle, if you think about it. Because a person's going to complain. Person's going to say, I'm trying, I'm working hard, doing all these different things, very good. What happens? I'm getting slammed. So what does a person do? A person questions the way God runs the world. So what do you care if someone's got a lot more money and they're building and they're doing other things? Well, that's not your concern. Right? And even if the person, is able to do that, whatever, it doesn't matter how they got the money, whatever. Doesn't matter. What's the point? God obviously is helping them. They want them to do this. Or they themselves want to do it, and God's helping them. Okay. What does that have to do with you? You're going to say, but I deserve this, or I deserve that. Well, what can God say? God can say yay or nay. Either you do, and God's going to help you, or you don't, or it's going to happen much later. Or it's going to happen in some time, but it's not going to happen now. Now, why does God decide that? Anyone's guess is as good as mine. Remember, God loves the prayers of the righteous. He wants, absolute subservience, and he wants you to pray from the depth of your heart. But when you got everything, your bank account's good, you don't pray as well. Now, does that mean it should be so hard? Again, God runs the world. But what does it cause the person to do? This is the problem. What does it cause the person to do? It causes them to have doubts about foundations of the Torah. They lack emunah. They lack the idea of the way God runs the world, hashgacha pratis, divine providence. Because we think we know better. We think we see the world in the right way. We got big egos. We think we know better. So you got to read the last 2 chapters, the book of Job. God chastises him for many things. It basically says you keep your big mouth shut. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what I do. You're not in control. At the same time, says the Choshen Levavos, you got to put your best foot forward. Okay. Now, putting your best foot forward, we said, is not a guarantee, but you have to do it. So what do I care what other people have done? Why am I looking at other people? People come to all kinds of crazy, conclusions to be able to fulfill and do what they want, right? I heard someone once say, you can't make this up, a person got caught, Orthodox Jew got caught for fraud doing something, whatever it was. They said, well, I don't do that. I mean, it's a secular Jew here. I don't do that. They're supposed to keep Torah. They don't, so I don't have to. Well, my kesher. What's the connection? God is going to judge that person who committed fraud, sure. They're going to get judged. That's not your problem. Right? That is totally not your problem. He's not going to ask you about them. He's not going to ask you about anybody else. He's going to ask you, why didn't you reach your potential? Why didn't you do what you were supposed to do? It's heard of David Kaplan. It should be well. Speak last week, right? I was one of his classes on in the Parsha. And he said there are people who make decisions. They make decisions when they're 7 years old. Right? I heard this, many years ago. A friend of my father's would say, when I was a kid, and I went to Jewish school and I got hit by the Rebbe, and that's what Torah is. Right? But I said it's not. Maybe he had a bad Rebbe, maybe, whatever. Kept saying the same thing to excuse himself so I don't have to keep Torah mitzvahs. I was like, yeah, but that happened 60 years ago, 70 years ago. Yeah, well, the person just kept saying the same thing like a parrot over and over, right? So I'm glad I'm not the only one who's seen this. But says Rav David Kaplan should be well, right? Made a very keen observation. He says, who makes a decision at the age of 7? 7-year-old makes a decision. Yeah, that's it. I'm out of school. I'm done with this Jewish stuff. 7 years old. Good point. You're going to say, well, I don't need education. I'm going to go get a job. Yeah? I'm going to say that. Get a bad teacher, whatever. Maybe you have to get therapy, got to work on it. Very good. Okay. But to make such a monumental decision at the age of 7, really? It's just people have an agenda. They want to defend their actions. And they're defended by that. That's ludicrous. No one's gonna, base the rest of their life on something that happened when they were 7. If a person, let's say, goes through a certain trauma, okay, different issue. We're not talking about that. Right? That's totally different issue. Right? But if someone's gonna make a monumental religious decision, when they don't have the capacity to analyze what's going on, in general, and they don't have any knowledge, it's kind of stupid if you think about it. Again, people go through bad experience. I get it. A lot of people gone through negative experiences. Okay. It's to do as I say, not as I do syndrome. Okay. Right? People in power, ability to influence, this, that. People see contradictions. True. Doesn't mean people are perfect. It doesn't mean that. It comes with responsibility. Very good. But how do you make a decision? How do you make a decision? As a 7-year-old. And years later, I don't care how many years later, 10 years later, 15 years later, 20 years later, you say, well, I based my decision where I'm going when I was 7. Based on what happened to me when I was 7. Really? Nothing changed since you were 7? Kind of incredible. Right? I would only say if it was something traumatic, person never recovered from it, or a person, whatever the trauma was, okay. Trauma is trauma. Well, I'm not talking about trauma. Maybe for this person it's traumatic, okay. Yeah, but they're 7 years old. Something that somebody goes through when they're 7 should not carry over to later in life. Shouldn't carry over. A person would have to get help, serious help. Right? They would have to get help to deal with it. Sometimes the person goes through things. Okay, they get scarred. 100% they get scarred. You very easily get scarred, okay. Well, that means you got to go for help somewhere. Try and get rid of that. Try and help you with that. But there are people go through things that they don't deal with when they're younger, or they don't deal in the right way, and what happens? It carries over, and they make the same mistakes later. Potentially the same mistakes with things that they went through. Right? It's got to sort of be nipped in the bud, otherwise it can cause serious problems later, depending on what it is. Let's say a person got bullied. 20 people get bullied. They don't process it, and then they do it to others. Or they just lose total self-confidence. Even later, when these things don't happen. So, these feelings have to be dealt with. Can't be just pushed away. Because it can have overriding effects, later on. And there are some people out there, that will repeat negative things parents did. They'll pass them on because they never processed it. They never dealt with it, or never got help, or maybe they didn't see anything wrong with it. They passed it down. That's tragic. All God wants. Does it happen? It definitely happens. It happens. Because people don't deal with feelings. Or they don't get help dealing with them. So what do? They repeat. They repeat what other people did to them. They do to others. Maybe not directly, whatever, but they don't deal with these feelings. It causes other problems. Now, obviously, depending on what it is and how far it goes, but you can have things that happen to a kid as a child, and they never get over it. They never saw it in perspective. They never saw it. They never understood why they had to go through it. And there were cases, I've read stories where, kids had to walk on eggshells because, parents had issues. And for the longest time, until they got help, they realized, or they thought it was their fault. And everything that, the parents said and did, was imperfection in them. And what they should have done, and they should have been better in this and that. But, in a number of cases, probably all of them, right? But in a number of cases, what happened? The parent was cracked. The parent had some sort of mental health issue. Either where parent was bipolar, or I'm not going to say schizophrenic, or schizophrenic per se. None of the stories I read, but whatever. Parents had serious issues. And the kids think it's all their fault. It wasn't the kid's fault. Parents have a certain, level of tolerance. Sometimes okay. They act out, they say things they shouldn't say. The kids take it, personally, whatever. And if it happens on a regular basis, the kids think it's their fault. It's all their fault. And the reality is the parents have anger issues. They have anger issues. Or psychological issues. Or both. Right? So, what happened? Kids don't deal with it. Kids think it's their own fault. Or they think, person can grow up in a house. Let's say one of the parents has serious issues. And they think this is the norm. But let's say, I don't know, one spouse, let's say, has tremendous anger issues or whatever. And the other spouse, takes part of it, deals with it, whatever. And they think that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it's supposed to be. So they take on the bad character traits. Right? And then they pass that on. And the other spouse, says no. Right? That's not what's going to be over here. Right? This is negative behavior. This you got to work on. This is not normal behavior. And at the end of the day, they refuse to go for help. That marriage is over. Or should be over. Because they're passing down the same thing. They have a screw loose. Why do they have a screw loose? Because the parent had a screw loose. And this person thought that's the norm, but guess what? If a person won't go for help, they won't go for help. But it definitely happens. And they can take on these negative character traits, and that plays havoc. Plays havoc on the spouse, plays havoc on their kids. A person can grow up in a messed up home, but they think it's all their fault. They think if I only would have done this, I only would have done that. But they don't realize till later that they get, till things break down and they get serious help or whatever. They don't realize it wasn't their fault. I mean, it's hard to see that as a kid. Definitely very hard to see that. But the parent can be their own worst enemy and destroy their kids in the process. Totally destroy them. And the kids think it's their fault. If I would have done this, if I would have done that, tried to please them, this, that, then come to find out, I mean, it's probably a huge relief. When they come to find out it wasn't their fault. Come to find out there was something much more serious going on, i.e. mental health issue. Yeah. Or it was a mental health issue. Person just, need to work on anger and anger skills and other things. I would just say it's just anger. It has a huge effect. Huge effect. So once a person realizes it's not their fault, it's like a huge burden lifted. They didn't do anything wrong over here. They totally didn't do anything wrong. But, as a kid, it's hard to see that. The person could be scrutinized for every little thing they do. And they may think, okay, if I'm better and I do things, I won't get yelled at. Very good. Yeah, they're walking on eggshells. They're absolutely walking on eggshells. That's not how a kid should be brought up. So yeah, the parent has to change, but the parent's not going to change, going to cause a problem. But again, I would think when a person comes to that realization, they see the bigger picture later. I mean, probably with a lot of help as well. But if they see that bigger picture later, they're whistling Dixie. They're like, wow, it wasn't my fault. It's hard to look back at a parent, let's say, looking at the parent in a totally negative way. Now, in some cases, it's not necessarily the parent's fault. Why not? They're brought up that way. Yeah, they have never learned from their parents. Right? Kind of like a gene that got passed down. They didn't learn from what happened. They pass it down. They pass it down until someone calls upon it. And let's say they don't see anything wrong with it, this, that. The person gets help and they realize it wasn't their fault. But you're going to say the damage has been done? No. I mean, there was damage done, true. Right now you're going to unravel a lot of the negativity. Right? You're not getting the parent off the hook, right? No question. Parent's not off the hook. But I would say it would make the person feel better that knowing that, yeah, they were put in a messed up situation. So you're going to say, why would God do that? So I can't answer. Everyone's got what they need to work through, whatever it is. But nobody's inherently that bad. Even as a kid, depending on what they do. Okay, you can say a parent has certain amount of what's it called? Certain amount of patience or whatever. But doesn't give them full reign to do whatever they want. There are parents that kill their kids, 100%. They kill their kids, psychologically. I'm not talking about beating them and other things, psychologically. Right? But, and, that person's going to need help. Okay. But I would think part of the healing process, and the ability, to be able to move on is to be able to see them for who they are. Now, if a parent, let's say, in contact with people who have this problem, that, their parents have certain, let's say, mental health issue. Let's say. They don't see it, and even if they would, they're not going to get help for it, whatever. But they certainly don't see it. Okay. They realize there's something going on here, right? In a major, in a negative way. Now, if they, so you're going to say, well, how can you have a relationship with somebody? So if a person in general realizes this is who they are, you can have a choice to have contact or not. That's not the point. But if they realize who they are and what type of people they are, for better or for worse, it makes a big difference. In other words, a person could say, well, look what they did, look what they said. Okay. And if someone is insane, so you're looking at an insane person in general. If they're insane, okay. So I'm not going to take what an insane person says seriously. But this is what you have to deal with. This 100% is what you have to deal with. Because once I understand that, and I understand where they're coming from, it makes a huge difference. I may not like it. I'm not going to say, You have to love it over here, right? You don't have to like it. Very good. No one's saying you have to like it, right? But you know what you're dealing with. See, once you have a realization, again, I'm not going to say it's going to answer everything, but once you have a realization, that, this person has certain hangups or whatever, and that it's not your fault, it's a huge burden that goes on. Huge. Not, I'm not going to say all of a sudden give the person, makes them feel like they want to whistle Dixie and they want to do all these things and changes everything overnight. Doesn't do that. But when a person realizes they said this, they said that, they did this, they did that, and they realize it wasn't the person's fault. It wasn't their fault. Or maybe it's only partially their fault, but what did they do? They blew it totally out of proportion. Okay. People can do that as well. Very good. Makes a huge difference. Because now, whatever they say going further will not have the same effect. And it shouldn't have the same effect. Why? Because now you're looking from the eyes of a different person. You're looking at it in a different way. That's a huge thing. Again, is it going to negate all the negativity before? No. It's not going to negate all that. It's not all of a sudden the person, wow, it's such an unbelievable thing, I'm whistling Dixie and everything's beautiful and whatever. No. But now they realize going forward, this is who the person is. This is what they're capable of. Right? I've heard a number of people say, but look what they did. And look how they did it. Okay. Well, let's say that person has limited intelligence or limited ability to deal with things, and that's how they deal with it. You understand now, picture perfect how it works. So now you look at it very differently. You're not going to be as effective, or you shouldn't be as effective. You have to, try and undo the damage that's already done. Okay. But going forward, understanding, this person's sick in many ways, makes it easier. Right? It makes it a lot easier. That's the hand you have to deal with in this world, among other things. Okay. You got to deal with a lot of different things. But if someone is not capable, see, this is the crux of it. If a person is not capable, they are not capable of dealing. That's how they deal with things. Right? But in general, that is who they are. That's the whole different thing. Right? That's a huge thing over here. Because once a person has the realization, like someone would say, this is who I am, deal with it. Right? I'm not going to change. Okay. So now you understand. You understand that's what you get. And you understand for the last 20 years, that's what it's been. Maybe longer, maybe shorter, it doesn't matter. But now you realize. Now you realize what the person brings to the table. I mean, you always realize this, but now there's a different perspective. And the different perspective is they're never going to change. And they're not interested in change. So if they're not going to be interested in change, how are you going to deal with it? How are you going to look at them? So you have a choice. Do I have to interact with them? Do I have to have anything to do with them? Or you just realize this is who they are. This is what I have to deal with if I want to deal with them. And that's it. And that's it. It's one-sided. They change, they say this, they say that, they do other. Okay, it's your choice. 100% it's your choice. But once you understand who they are, and you understand really who they are, what's driving them, as painful as it may be, I have a choice. But you see, okay, this person's a sick puppy in different ways. They're sick. Very good. But now you realize what's going on here. Right? And now it's been clear. Right? Now it's been made clear. So once you understand that, again, what about everything that happened before? What about all the pain before? Okay. I'm not saying it totally disappears. Right? But now you have a different perspective. Once you have a different perspective, on how it works and what's going on, not going to change a person overnight. It's not going to make, the person love the other person or whatever. Not going to do that. But, it changes the way we think. Absolutely changes the way we think. And that's a huge thing. Because now I have a whole different perspective. a whole different perspective how to deal with it. That's a different feeling. Right? So this goes together, okay, well, what does that do we're talking about? That's everything that we're talking about, because now a person's going to say, come on, it's not fair, it's not this. Why did God give me these parents, these siblings, these whatever? Yeah. What about what's fair? Maybe part of it, maybe, I'm not saying it is, maybe part of it is you need to fix up things or go through things, right? But you would never be able, even let's say, give people advice because of what you've gone through. But you didn't go through it. Again, I'm not going to say it's the only reason. It's not. It's not the only reason. But you can certainly give strength to someone who's gone through it because you've gone through it yourself. Or maybe you haven't, but you know other people. But the whole perspective changes when I know what's at stake. When I understand how the game works, then I see the bigger picture. It's totally different. It's totally different, right? And that's a big thing. It's a huge thing because going further, a person realizes, it's not about me here. It's about how I deal with it. Very good. Right? So the perspective is you see other things and things happen, then you question, why is God doing this? So sometimes the answer is, or a lot of times, we don't know. Right? We don't know, but he's got a plan. And because he has a plan, over here we're saying that what? And just because something happens, let's say to someone else and they get a windfall, they make a lot of money, kids are great, this and that. Okay, so God wanted them to have that. But there's another aspect over here. And the other aspect is, why am I looking at what other people have? Whether it's family-wise, money-wise, I don't know, health-wise. Well, what do I care? Why do we care what other people have? You're going to say, I got enough on my plate to deal with. Yeah, we do. That's 100% true. We have a lot on our plate to deal with. So we got to deal with what we have to deal with. Very good. Doesn't matter what other people go through. Doesn't matter what I see other people have. We get caught up. We lose focus very easily. We're curious also. What other people are doing, where they're going, is that we're curious. That's normal. Now, it doesn't mean a person should say it, say certain things, right? But you're kind of curious, like, what happened over here? What happened with this? What happened with that? And a person is dying. The person's dying to ask the question. But you know what? That's like being too nosy. And the simple answer is, what does it matter? What does it matter? So perspective is important. How I look at things are important. How I look at myself is important. Right? The Mishna Sanhedrin says, "Bishvili nivra olam." The world is created for me, i.e., for me, not anyone else. The world is created for me. Very good. Yeah, I got to worry about myself. Can't worry what else is going on around me. Now, we got to be the best we can be. Have to have good character traits, have to work hard. We don't always do the right thing. Very good. But a person, as Ramchal says, we're put in this world. You do not want to get distracted. And it's very, very easy to get distracted. Very, very easy to get distracted. And the reason is because we do. A lot of things out there, some of them bad, some of them good, whatever it may be, some interesting, and we get distracted, which is what God does not want, to happen. But he said, you're in this world to toil. As Ramchal says, you're in this world to struggle, whatever it may be. So so one of the things we learn here by the evil eye is I can't worry about other people. I can't worry what other people are doing. I can't worry about where they're going. That has no effect on me. Now, maybe sometimes it does affect us in different ways, but in general, it should have no effect. Because God's going to judge them however he judges them. He's going to judge us however he judges us. Very good. Very good. But what does he want? He wants you to keep your eye on the ball. He wants you to stay focused. He does not want you to lose sight of what reality is. And we get carried away in things that essentially don't matter. And we look at things in the wrong way. Right? As we said before, if God's going to scrutinize us, are we going to pass the test? Someone will say that's not the point. I'm like, that is the point. I didn't mention the fact all things you should be thankful for, which we always speak about, right? Plenty of things to be thankful for, even if we're getting squeezed, even if it's hard or whatever, right? That's true, right? That 100% is true. But at the end of the day, I have to realize, what am I living for? Right? What am I doing? What's my perspective? Where am I holding? A lot of things here. But it's very easy to lose focus on ourselves. It's very easy to get carried away in other things that don't matter. And we do it all the time. Essentially, we do it all the time. Nobody wants to hear that. Right? But, we're too worried about why this happened, the other thing, and other people. And essentially, we're losing the focus on ourselves. We're losing the focus on what's really important, right? And what happens when you do that? Then you look at other people. Then you start saying, "Oh, why do they have this? And I should have that, and I should have the ability, and and all this." And that's where it snowballs. When you lose perspective on yourself, you snowball. Then you start looking at things that don't matter to you. That should matter to you, right? But it's very easy. It's very easy to see what other people have and what you don't have, or what you perceive you don't have, or maybe you don't have. It doesn't matter. Why is that focus being lost? Right? And what's the answer? It's very simple, because you don't have the right perspective, or you're not tuned in. You're not, or let's say better, you're not locked in. You're not locked in on what you need to do. When you're not locked in, when you need what you need to do, and you get distracted, this is what happens. This is exactly what happens. Then you're looking at things that don't pertain to you, don't apply to you. And once you do that, then you lose focus. Once you lose focus, other things happen. Other things in a negative way. So here, this perspective is that when a person is weak in emunah, as we said, it means that you have doubts about the foundation of Torah, essentially how God runs the world. Once you do that, you run into problems. So then you start to question. Then you start to question why this happened, the other thing happened, why other people have it easy. You seem to struggle in this, and you're working hard. You're working hard. You want to go on the right path, and it's not fair because, you're going through this, that, and the other thing, and, life seems unbearable. See, once you lose your focus on Torah, once you start questioning things and have doubts, so this is a lack of emunah. And once the person has a lack of emunah, they start to question. They're gonna say, why is this happen? Why does that happen? Why is the other thing? Why does the other thing happen? And then they realize that once, then they get jealous, and then they don't see the real perspective. And they see other things that happen that they can't make sense out of, right? And they say, well, then they come to the conclusion that, wow, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and other people aren't. And I'm being tossed around, and it's not fair, so I'm not going to pray. I'm not going to make blessings, I'm not going to pray, I'm not going to do anything, as if to say there's nothing ever good in their life. And there are a million things we got to be thankful for. Right? Again, which we speak about quite a bit. A million things we have to be thankful for. But it's hard to see it when you're being tossed around and you're being down in the dumps. But they're again, if a person has health to go into the right path, regardless of what it's hard, they should kiss the ground. They should kiss the ground. Should be absolutely thankful. Got a roof over their head, even if it doesn't belong to them. Even though, they have to live with other people, whatever it may be. They're not out on the street. They're largely happen. I want this and I want that, and this should happen. And this makes it impossible. You're right. There's hardship. It's part of the game. It's called life. It's hardship. But you got to remember. It's not about what's fair or not fair. That's not the question. The question is, God runs the world. God's in charge, right? That we understand. He's in charge. So when we start questioning in general, why this, why that, it shows a lack of emunah. 100% it shows a lack of emunah. That we are questioning why God is doing this and doing that. It's not for us to question. If a person made bad decisions on their own, whether they're egged on by the evil inclination or not, doesn't matter. Whatever it is, they made bad decisions. Okay. God's like, I didn't tell you to do that. There are repercussions now. And let's say God put you in situations to test you. Okay. So a person comes to the wrong conclusion. Right? They can come to the wrong conclusion and say, like, this person has this, someone did that, whatever. Life, life's unfair. Yeah. So what's the answer? Life's not about what's fair or not. Life's about what we do, what we think for the most part, how we put things in actions, how we serve God. That's what's important. That's exactly what's important. And if we start questioning why this, why that, that undermines the fundamental principle that God is in charge, and that we have an obligation to follow Torah, whatever he says. It totally undermines that. It means a person's lacking in emunah. Now, it doesn't mean people have easy lives. That's all we're saying. We're not saying people have easy lives. Right? So even if it's difficult, a person say, well, it has to be this difficult. Again, I'm not answering that question. That's between them and God. Right? But the bottom line, God's in charge. When a person starts to question, then it's a lack of emunah. And when it's a lack of emunah, you don't see straight. You don't see the bigger perspective. Right? You definitely don't see the bigger perspective. Yeah, I'm going to stop there. Any questions? All right, I'm going to stop here. I just every Saturday, 2 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, you can send me, you can find me on Facebook at Chaim Kaufman, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, orthodoxconversion.com, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on YouTube. There I got videos on Q&As, ethics of our fathers, Book of Leviticus. You want to send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com. IBBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Wish everyone good.